We've been looking at all sorts of fascinating stuff lately, and something you shared really caught my eye. The material from the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness.
Oh, yeah.
They seem to be doing some really interesting work over there. It's
Yeah.
a US-based clinic, and it looks like they have a long history, like over 20 years, of really focusing on these complementary approaches to reproductive health.
Yeah, they've got a pretty wide range of services, too, like acupuncture and herbal medicine,
Oh, wow.
even light therapy and nutritional guidance. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I gotta say, what really grabbed me in their materials was the connection they drew between vitamin D and fertility.
Mm.
It's so detailed, and I think it's something that, a lot of people probably don't even think about.
Right.
So that's what we're going to do today. Our mission is to really dive deep into those key ways that
Yeah.
your vitamin D levels can actually have a huge impact on your ability to conceive.
Absolutely. And I think the best place to start is with this, realizing that vitamin D it's so much more than just a vitamin.
Right.
It's not just something you pick up in the vitamin aisle. It's actually a fat-soluble compound that acts as a precursor to some really important hormones in the body. And the information from the Berkeley Center, what they emphasize is its really widespread impact on these core processes like how our cells function,
Okay.
how our immune system responds, and even the delicate balance of our hormones,
Right.
all of which, of course, are absolutely central when we're talking about the complexities of getting pregnant.
So they talk about hormonal imbalance as the first key mechanism.
Right.
And they highlight this fact that we have vitamin D receptors, or VDRs, in some really important areas. So in the brain, in the hypothalamus, in the pituitary gland,
Right.
and then directly in the reproductive organs themselves.
Yeah.
So the ovaries, the testes, and the uterus.
Exactly. And the fact that we find these receptors in those specific places
Yeah.
really suggests a pretty fundamental role for vitamin D in this whole reproductive axis. And, when you think about it, it's almost as if our bodies have evolved to directly sense and respond to vitamin D levels when it comes to our potential to reproduce.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and when vitamin D levels are low, well, that communication pathway gets disrupted, and this then interferes with the production and the regulation of those key sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone.
So how does this actually play out for women specifically?
Well, in women low vitamin D, it can really throw off the signaling of those two key hormones,
Okay.
follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, or FSH and LH.
Right.
Those are the ones that really orchestrate the whole menstrual cycle and ovulation.
Yeah.
So you can imagine if that signaling gets messed up, well, cycles can become irregular, and in some cases, there might even be a complete absence of ovulation. And then there's this other interesting connection they point to between lower vitamin D levels and lower levels of that anti-Müllerian hormone.
Right. AMH.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Which is a really important indicator of a woman's ovarian reserve.
And of course, we can't forget about the men.
No, absolutely not.
It really does take two, right?
Right, it takes two to tango.
So what's the story with vitamin D and male fertility?
So this information suggests that in men, if there isn't enough vitamin D, it can actually contribute to lower levels of testosterone.
Okay.
And we know how crucial testosterone is for healthy sperm production and just overall sperm quality.
Right.
So, the impact across the board is pretty clear.
Yeah.
If your hormone levels aren't where they need to be, whether we're talking about ovulation or sperm production,
Right.
conceiving naturally becomes a whole lot more challenging.
Now, the second mechanism they talk about is poor egg and sperm quality.
Yeah.
And I mean, that seems pretty foundational, right?
It really is. It's the heart of the matter. And the Berkeley Center's information, it emphasizes vitamin D's role in the development of gametes themselves, so the eggs and the sperm.
Okay.
And, for women, it's about supporting the healthy maturation of those follicles within the ovaries, making sure that the eggs that are released are actually good quality.
Okay.
And then for men, it's not just about producing sperm, it's about making sure that the sperm are good swimmers.
Right.
They have good motility so they can actually reach the egg.
Uh-huh.
And also reducing DNA fragmentation, that damage to the sperm's genetic material.
They also mentioned the antioxidant properties of vitamin D.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So vitamin D acts as an antioxidant,
Okay.
which means it helps to neutralize these harmful molecules called reactive oxygen species, ROS. And, it's not just about general protection. It's about protecting that delicate DNA within sperm and eggs.
Right.
These ROS are like little little rogue agents that can actually damage that crucial genetic code. And vitamin D is like a security force that goes in and neutralizes those threats. And, when vitamin D levels are low, well, you tend to see more of these damaging ROS, which then leads to that impaired egg and sperm function, reduced motility, abnormal shapes, things like that.
Right.
Ultimately, it just makes fertilization less likely, and it could really compromise the viability of any embryo that does result.
So the third point they bring up is endometrial receptivity.
Yeah.
Basically, the uterus's ability to be a welcoming environment for that fertilized egg.
Right. It's got to be ready to receive and nurture that embryo.
So how does vitamin D factor into this whole process?
Well, they suggest that vitamin D is involved in regulating the genes that are crucial for the development of the endometrium, that inner lining of the uterus, and for its ability to actually support implantation.
Okay.
They specifically mention HOXA10, which is like a master switch. In the uterine lining, that helps prepare it to be receptive to a fertilized egg.
So it's like getting everything ready for the big arrival.
Exactly.
Got it.
And when vitamin D is low, well, it seems to disrupt that normal receptive environment. And it can make it less likely for an embryo to implant successfully.
And it's not just about the physical lining itself.
Right.
It's also about the immune environment within the uterus, right?
Absolutely. So vitamin D also plays a role in modulating those inflammatory cytokines.
Okay.
Think of cytokines as the messengers of your immune system. Some are pro-inflammatory. They're like shouting attack, while others help to calm things down.
Okay.
And vitamin D helps to keep those messengers in balance within the uterus, making sure it's not, overly loud with inflammation that could actually reject an embryo.
I see.
And when vitamin D is deficient, it can shift the balance towards a more inflammatory state in the uterus. And that could be a real problem because that kind of environment can be hostile to an implanting embryo. And it can lead to failed implantation and sadly even early pregnancy loss.
So that leads us to their fourth mechanism, immune dysregulation.
Yeah, immune dysregulation. So it really does seem like vitamin D is pretty important for keeping the immune system in a state of balance when it comes to fertility.
Right. So it's not just about the hormones.
Right.
It's also about this delicate dance with the immune system.
Absolutely. So this information describes vitamin D as an immune modulator.
Okay.
Meaning it helps to tone down those overly aggressive pro-inflammatory responses. And that is really crucial during pregnancy.
Yeah.
Because the mother's body needs to develop a certain level of tolerance towards, the embryo.
Right. It's like it's got to recognize that this is not an invader.
Exactly. It's got to say, hey, this is supposed to be here.
Right.
And when vitamin D is low, there's an increased risk of the immune system getting a little overzealous and potentially even producing autoantibodies. That could mistakenly target reproductive tissues or even the embryo itself.
Wow. So that can be a real issue.
Yeah, it can be a real obstacle to a successful pregnancy.
And of course, this can all tie into existing conditions like PCOS or endometriosis.
Oh, absolutely.
Which, already involve inflammation.
Right. So in women who have conditions like PCOS or endometriosis, low vitamin D can actually make that inflammation even worse, which just adds another layer of complexity to the challenges of fertility.
So really, a well-regulated immune response, supported by adequate vitamin D is just so key.
It's absolutely essential.
For successful conception and just having a healthy pregnancy overall.
Yeah.
Now, the fifth mechanism that they highlight is this connection between low vitamin G and PCOS.
Yeah.
Polycystic ovary syndrome.
Right. And as we know, PCOS is a leading cause of infertility in women.
Yeah, it's incredibly common.
It is. And what's really interesting here is just how often low vitamin D is seen in women with PCOS. It's like a recurring theme.
So it almost seems like a bit of a chicken and egg situation.
It does, doesn't it?
Which one came first?
Right.
But this information suggests that vitamin D deficiency can actually make some of the core issues in PCOS worse.
Yeah, so things like insulin resistance and the overproduction of androgens, those male hormones, they can all be exacerbated by low vitamin D.
So it's like this vicious cycle.
It can be, yeah. But there's hope, right?
There is, because they also point out that adequate vitamin D can actually help to improve insulin sensitivity.
Right.
and reduce those elevated androgen levels.
Wow.
And that's really crucial for restoring regular ovulation in women with PCOS.
Right, so it can help to break that cycle.
Exactly.
But on the flip side,
Yeah.
if vitamin D levels are low, it's like it amplifies the hormonal chaos
Right.
that already
Yeah.
exists in PCOS.
It's like adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, exactly.
And that leads to more irregular cycles.
A higher likelihood of not ovulating.
Right.
And ultimately, it reduces the chances of conceiving.
Now, for those who are, either considering or actually going through fertility treatments, the sixth mechanism is particularly relevant, and that's the potential for reduced success with RA.
Yeah, assisted reproductive technologies.
Right.
And this information highlights studies that have actually observed a correlation between lower vitamin D levels in women undergoing IVF and lower success rates overall. It seems like having optimal vitamin D levels can really play a supportive role, both in the implantation of the embryo after it's transferred, and in the healthy development of the placenta.
So having enough vitamin D can actually make a difference in the success of those treatments.
That's what the research seems to be suggesting, yeah.
And this information, it really points to a link between vitamin D deficiency and lower rates of achieving a clinical pregnancy,
right,
and fewer live births following IVF.
It's significant. And it could be connected to a number of factors that we've already talked about, like a less receptive uterine lining, or a less than ideal interaction between the embryo and the lining of the uterus.
So it's really something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. If you're embarking on RT, making sure your vitamin D levels are adequate is definitely an important consideration.
Now, the seventh mechanism brings in another very important nutrient. Calcium. And we all know that vitamin D plays a huge role in calcium metabolism.
Right. It's essential for calcium absorption.
So how does this connection between vitamin D and calcium affect fertility?
Well, it turns out that maintaining that delicate calcium balance, which is so influenced by vitamin D, is really important, both for fertilization and for the implantation of the embryo. And this information reminds us that calcium homeostasis, it's vital for a number of reproductive processes. So for men, for example, it's absolutely crucial for sperm capacitation, which is that final stage of maturation that sperm have to go through to be able to fertilize an egg.
Wow. So calcium is actually involved in getting the sperm ready for their big mission.
It really is. It's a key player.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then in women, it seems to play a role in preparing the uterus for pregnancy. And any disruptions in calcium signaling, which can happen when vitamin D levels are low, can even interfere with those very early stages of embryonic development.
So calcium is involved in so many different aspects of this whole process.
It really is. It's fascinating how interconnected everything is.
Yeah, it really is.
And how vital these nutrients are.
So we've talked a lot about how low vitamin D can impact fertility, but this information also delves into the why, like the reasons behind these effects at a biological level.
Right. It's not just a simple vitamin shortage.
Yeah.
It's much more complex than that.
So what's going on at that deeper level?
Well, it turns out that vitamin D, in its active form, 1025 dihydroxyvitamin D, it actually acts very much like a steroid hormone in the body. And it binds to those vitamin D receptors, those VDRs that we talked about earlier, which are present in all sorts of tissues throughout the reproductive system.
Right.
And this binding then triggers changes in the expression of many different genes that are involved in processes that are absolutely critical for reproduction.
So it's like it's influencing the very blueprint of how our reproductive systems function.
Exactly. It's influencing things like cell differentiation, the division and growth of cells, and even the regulation of the immune system.
So can you give us some specific examples of how this actually plays out?
Sure. So for example, both the ovaries and the testes, they rely on vitamin D for steroidogenesis, which is the production of our sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And then the uterus, as we've discussed, it needs adequate vitamin D to help establish immune tolerance towards the embryo. And to make sure that its lining is ready for implantation. And then, of course, both sperm and eggs, they depend on vitamin D for maintaining their their structural integrity and for their proper function.
So vitamin D is really involved in so many different aspects of this whole system.
It really is. It's pervasive.
And they even touch on an evolutionary perspective.
Yeah.
Which I found really fascinating.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
Yeah, that vitamin D levels, which are often linked to the amount of sunlight we're exposed to,
Right.
might actually serve as an environmental cue to the body about the optimal time for reproduction.
Right. Like a signal that says, hey, now's a good time.
Right.
Or maybe you should wait.
Yeah.
And a deficiency in vitamin D could, from an evolutionary standpoint, signal that the environmental conditions aren't ideal and that maybe it would be better to delay conception until conditions are more favorable.
That's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. It's like our bodies are tuned in to these subtle cues from the environment.
So we've discussed all these biological mechanisms, but what does the actual research show in terms of, how common vitamin D deficiency is and its real-world impact on fertility?
Well, this information provides some pretty compelling figures.
Okay.
So for women, they mention studies that have indicated higher rates of both infertility and miscarriage in those who have vitamin D levels below 20 nanograms per milliliter.
Okay.
Which is generally considered the threshold for deficiency.
Right.
And specifically, they cite a 2018 meta-analysis, which is a review of multiple studies that found a 34% lower rate of success in IVF for women who were vitamin D deficient.
That's huge.
It is. It's a significant difference.
Yeah. And what about the evidence in men?
So for men, this information points to research that has linked vitamin D levels below that same 20 ng/ml threshold to lower sperm motility, meaning the sperm aren't swimming as well.
Right.
And also to lower sperm count.
Okay.
But interestingly, they also note that in some cases, providing vitamin D supplementation has actually shown promise in improving these sperm parameters.
Wow, so there's potential there to make a real difference.
There is, yeah.
Now, how widespread is vitamin D deficiency in the general population?
It's surprisingly common.
Yeah.
This information states that globally, somewhere between 30 and 50% of people are affected by vitamin D deficiency.
Wow, so it's not just a small segment of the population?
No, it's a substantial portion.
And they mention certain populations that are at higher risk.
Right. So those who live in northern latitudes,
where
there's less sunlight exposure throughout the year.
Right.
Individuals with darker skin pigmentation, which naturally reduces vitamin D production from sunlight. And those who just generally have limited time spent outdoors.
So in terms of fertility, what are the key target levels for vitamin D?
Okay, so they define levels below 20 ng/ml as deficient.
Okay.
And those between 20 and 30 ng/ml as suboptimal.
Right.
And importantly, they point out that fertility outcomes tend to show improvement when vitamin D levels are above that 30 to 40 ng/ml range.
Okay, so that's kind of the sweet spot.
Yeah, that's where you want to be.
And they briefly mention supplementation as a way to address a deficiency.
Right, and they say that correcting a deficiency through supplementation, typically with doses in the range of 2,000 to 4,000 IU per day, can enhance fertility in many individuals.
But they do emphasize that this should always be done under the guidance of a healthcare professional.
Absolutely. It's crucial to work with your doctor to determine the appropriate dose for you.
Right. And they also caution that excessively high levels of vitamin D above 100 ng/ml may potentially be harmful.
Right. So it's all about finding that balance.
Yeah, it's not just about taking as much as you can.
Exactly. More is not always better.
Now, one final point that I think is really important to mention is this distinction between correlation and causation.
Oh, yeah, that's a really important point.
Because we see these strong associations between low vitamin D and impaired fertility.
Right.
But it's not always clear, which one is causing the other.
Exactly. And this information reminds us that low vitamin D might sometimes be a marker of other underlying health issues, like obesity or chronic inflammation, which themselves can have a negative impact on fertility.
So it's not always as simple as saying low vitamin D equals infertility.
Exactly. It's more nuanced than that.
Okay, so let's bring all of this together. Based on all this amazing information from the Berkeley Center for Reproductive Wellness, It seems like vitamin D really is so much more
It is.
than just a minor player when it comes to our ability to conceive.
Absolutely. It's a key player.
And it's involved in so many different ways.
In so many different ways.
From regulating our hormones to the quality of our eggs and sperm,
right,
to making sure the uterus is receptive and our immune system is balanced.
It's really remarkable how important it is.
And given how widespread vitamin D deficiency is and its potential impact on our reproductive health,
right,
it really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
About all these other seemingly simple factors that might be having a huge impact on our bodies and our well-being.
Yeah, it's like a whole new world opens up.
Yeah, it really is.
When you start to look at these things.
And it definitely makes me think about, my own health and wanting to learn more and maybe even get my vitamin D levels checked.
Yeah, it's definitely worth considering.
Especially if, starting a family or growing your family is something that's on your mind.
Absolutely. It's an important piece of the puzzle.
Well, this has been so fascinating.
Yeah, it has.
And I really appreciate you taking the time to break it all down for us.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I hope everyone listening will, take this information to heart and really start to think about their own vitamin D levels.
It's a simple thing that can make a big difference.
Absolutely.